little bit faster here, so let's go on to 9.
5-year-old would think. Kansas is as flat as a pancake, number 9. This is referring to a slightly tongue-in-cheek study that some scientists did looking into the claim that Kansas is as flat as a pancake. And what they did was they took an elevation profile of Kansas and showed that it was very flat. That doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that Kansas doesn't curve with the Earth. That's not what they meant.
But it
There's
does.
no implication in this scientific study that there was no curvature. And it's dishonest of flat earthers to imply that there is.
Okay. All right. What do we say about this? This, I am sure, this particular article, I am sure, is what he's talking about, because they even mentioned the little tongue-in-cheek type thing. And yeah, they are looking at that in reference to sea level. That's great. But he's saying that doesn't mean that there isn't any curvature. Well, you know, it kind of does, because, you know, it doesn't matter if you're in Kansas or if you're in Colorado, flat is flat is flat. If there is no dropping away of the ground, or if you are not able to measure any curvature, any natural curvature of the Earth, then Kansas is flat. Not only that, Kansas may be flatter than a pancake, but I believe it's Florida that is even flatter than Kansas. And of course, Florida has all kinds of water on it, and if that water was curved, well, we'd be having some problems with it. So that's all I need to say about that. You guys have anything?
Yeah, it's the same thing for me. It upsets me, because if we're just going to allow people to give us metaphysical nonsense, non-reality based observations, when they get away with saying that the ocean is level because it's always the same distance from the center of the Earth, and that's something you could never prove, because you're saying, well, then there would be no curve. No, there'd be no curve because it's level. Well, then the Earth is flat. Easy one for me.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Kansas being flat as a pancake is just one good example of how the Earth is flat. And he's theoretically saying, you know, well, no, they don't mean that it's flat. They mean that it's perfectly curved. But again, that's what sea level is supposedly is on the spherical Earth. It should be called sea curve, because it's, like you said, it's a certain distance from the very center of the Earth, and that's what they call sea level. But they should call it sea curve. But no, Kansas is flat because the Earth is flat and it's part of the plains. I mean, I don't see how much more, you know, simple it could get. But the geodetic surveys of the Great Plains show that there isn't any curvature, and they're not factoring for curvature. They're not allowing for curvature. They're simply measuring the Earth, and it's frickin' flat. Damn it.
Yeah, and they will, of course, their rebuttal of that will be, well, no, you have to go with the geodesic surveyors, which, of course, again, is a complete fantasy based on a mathematical construct, because there is no observable curvature, there is no measurable curvature, period. Okay, and nobody has ever been able to come up with that. Like Gibran said, where's the curvature? Where? All right.
Yeah, I know Brian Mullen is hopefully going to be doing some stuff with that Force the Line experiment that he's been talking about. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but
well, here's the problem with that. You're just going to get somebody that's going to come and say exactly what he said. That he's going to say that, oh yeah, he did the Force the Line experiment and proved that the Earth is perfectly curved. That's the problem. They've had 400 years, 300 years to build up a nonsense idea. It is simply not based in reality. We know how
so you think that the Force the Line experiment would prove the Earth is curved?
I'm saying that's how they'll say it. See, look at it the same way as if you
you don't trust Brian Mullen.
I trust him a lot. I'm just saying, if all you're going to have, even if he proves it, which we know he will, you set up those bars and you lay the cross the top. But what he's going to say, I'm talking about 5 red pairs, is that we just proved exactly what the Kansas experiment proved, which is it's flat, but that's on a curved ball, and because every place is equal distant from the center of the ball Earth, that's what you would get. Because they're making up something that has no proof behind it. You have to prove first that we are on a ball and that the center of gravity is in the middle. It's a thought idea. It's a thought experiment. It's
Right.
not
And
reality.
also remember that Cyrus Teed allegedly did the rectilineator experiment, which of course, his conclusion supposedly was that the Earth was curving up, and it was a concave Earth. And of course, LSC tried to do that experiment, and to his credit, admitted that it was a fraud and that Cyrus Teed lied about it because it couldn't be done. And even if it could have been done, I'm sure it would have proven exactly the same thing that Brian Mullen is trying to prove with the force of line, is that there is no curvature either up or down. It's going to be perfectly flat. So it's not that, Jaron is doubting Brian Mullen. Like he said, he's just simply saying that the counter argument is going to be, one of denial and saying, "Oh, well, that just proves our point." It's like, really?
Right,
So
right.
our
No, no,
measurements are flat.
I was totally confused. I didn't mean to be like interrogative. I just didn't understand where
No,
you were coming from.
interrogate me. No, I mean, it's the thing I keep getting when I try to explain to people that, between California and New York, there's this 700 miles of curvature, and then that it simply doesn't exist in reality. But somebody will say, well, the West Coast and the East Coast, the sea level is the same. And they don't understand that if that's true, then there has to be that 700 miles of curvature in between those 2 points for it to be a ball. And they'll say, no, it doesn't, because that's part of the surface of the Earth, which is a curve. Therefore, those two ends are level. It's a total mind screw, and it just bothers me that they get away with it because it's not reality.
I grew up in Central Florida, and Central Florida is extremely flat. There's very rare times when you go up and down hills in Central Florida, but on average, like the Orlando area is, I think, something like, if I'm not mistaken, about 3 feet above sea level on average. And to me, that was always a little bit scary. It's like, well, wow, what if a major tsunami came this way? It'd be pretty scary. But this is as a globe earther, but not thinking of it. Florida's a few hundred miles wide, 3 feet above sea level. Technically, it should be, thousands and thousands of feet above sea level, above sea curve, right? With the sea, being in every direction below Florida, with Florida on top of the world. Because, if you're anywhere you're observing the spherical Earth, you're on the top of it, hypothetically. So flooding shouldn't be any sort of an issue for anywhere. But that's just all sort of a moot point. But the point I was making is that Florida is another very flat place that is on average, just a few feet above sea level. And when you think about that in globe Earth terms, it really doesn't make any sense. But in flat Earth terms, it makes perfect sense.
Let me try and explain something, and if I could explain this correctly, it would completely disprove the ball Earth, and I probably can't explain it correctly. But let's say you're building a bridge, and that bridge is a mile long, and you've got post A and post B, and the bridge is going to span between those two posts. If you were going to measure the curvature that you needed to employ to put that bridge up, imagine the fact that if you just measure the curvature between those 2 points, that's one thing. But like we said, the curvature of the Earth is exponential. So what if we removed ourselves and put ourselves way off to the side of that bridge and measured the distance from that point to the post? Well, now, because it's exponential, you could be going off the shelf, for saying that that would be a completely curved portion of the Earth. So depending on where you're looking at every single spot of the Earth, the curve is always different. There is no such thing as a ball that people could live on and maintain life. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. You can't have 2 points on a ball that you simply have to measure between those 2 points and then say, oh, this is the curvature. We need to build the bridge this way. Because what if I have a road coming from 20 miles off in the distance, a bridge going to that post? Well, then what about the curve from those two places? It would have to be completely leaning, which would then mess up the curve from the first post you put it at. So the curvature of the Earth would always have to be changing. And the way they describe it is just, oh no, it's always the same. It's always level. That's what they get away with. They're calling it a level ball.
Right.
And it's like obvious that that's what they're doing. They're calling it a level horizontal ball.
Well, yeah, and then you've got like, for example, I think it's called the 6 Mile or the 9 Mile bridge. I forget, but it's the southern tip of Florida that takes you out to the Keys. and it's many miles, several miles of perfectly flat bridge, and you can look at either Google Earth images of it or just people driving across it in time lapse, or just look at the schematics of it, and it's obviously perfectly level.
Or Lake Pontchartrain's bridge also.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, there's lots of examples.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so just for you guys' information, in our chat, I posted the roster of questions, so you can kind of see ahead, and we keep our redundancy on the answers down to a minimum, and save a little. Oh no, it's not a problem. I just wanted to let you guys know because we're only on question 10, and but that's us, right? We're very thorough. So let's.
Has anybody? You mentioned redundant. Has anybody been watching this series Westworld?
I remember the movie.
Yeah.
With Yul Brynner.
Yeah. Anyway, you mentioned redundant and just sort of drummed it up because I started watching it. It's sort of addictive, but yeah, I was a fan of the old what's his face movie, Yul Brynner. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway,
let's move on.
An elevation is taken as the distance from the center from the Earth. So, although each point has a very similar elevation, that doesn't mean that it doesn't curve.
I didn't let him finish the statement, so I'll just let him finish the statement and then go through number 10.
That's not what they meant. There's no implication that they meant that, and it's dishonest to say that there is.